We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Hey, welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. We're going to start in a few minutes, but I want to tell you to hit up our social sites, retweet, share, comment, like, do all of that stuff. It can only help us out and it'll make the show even better. But we're getting ready to give you a lot of good Ole Miss information, and I just thought I would tell you that because the POMcast is starting. Well, it's starting right now. Wait, no, that's a little early. It is starting right about now. All right, welcome to the POMcast on this Friday. We finally made it to Friday. I'm so excited. I'm just jazzed up. And that's not even me going to Hollywood Studios tonight, jazzed up. I'm jazzed up about this game, and we will put the finishing touches on it today. But before we get started, I do want to tell you about Travel and Cruise World. That's 1-800-330-7461, 1-800-330-7461. Basically, what I was trying to do was to give you guys a resource. They get paid by the parks. And they can get you the same rates you can get online. So you can just use them and get them as a resource to do all the attractions for mask rules or whatever's going on during this whole month. We're about 18 months into this at this point. So 1-800-330-7461. See Central Florida like a local, travelandcruiseworld.com. Also want to tell you about Book a Tailgate. Still time to do it. You can book your spot in the Grove. They'll set you up. They'll store your current tailgating equipment, get you rentals for new needed tailgating equipment. They can give you a tent. They can even rent you a second tent if you have more people than you were expecting to come. They'll even pick up your catering. Give them a call at 662-701-1177. Again, that is 662-701-1177. Bookatailgate.com. Also want to tell you real quick about La Terrain watches. Nice, affordable, inexpensive options for watches. Look on there, find something you like. Whenever you check out, use the promo code POMcast, and they will take care of you. Before we get started, I'll tell you, if you want to watch the show, you can catch us at The Stephen Willis or at Old Positively, Facebook.com/POMcast. That's obviously Facebook. On YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Subscribe, hit the bell. You'll not only know that we're streaming, you'll know what we're streaming about. And, of course, Twitch at Positively Ole Miss. All one word, all lowercase. You can see below the podcast options as well, as we're pretty much just everywhere you need to be. Just search Positively Ole Miss, and you'll be able to find it. Twitter Spaces. We're doing a Twitter Space tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central. It'll be about 15, 20 minutes. We'll talk a little bit about the game. If you listened last week, you know that I was pretty on about the possibility of what happened and just kind of worked our way through it. And after 15 or so minutes, got the phone. It was a pretty good thing on Twitter Spaces. I'm also trying to figure out how to archive it so I can upload it to YouTube so you can have that content as well after the fact. It might be Tuesday or Wednesday when it pops up, but on our YouTube channel, it should eventually get there and you can hear what we said. So that is pretty cool. Is there anything else? No. Today's show, we're going to put the finishing touches on the Arkansas prep, and going into that, we're going to talk about the uniforms for the game. Those have been announced, and we're going to talk about some potential injuries that could play a role in tomorrow's game. We've already talked about, if you paid attention to all our broadcasts, you can probably guess what that last part is and who it's about, but it's there. We've talked all week about the prep for the Arkansas game and what is going on. And we interviewed Kevin Bohannon, we interviewed Jake Thomas, and we talked to different people back and forth about the Ole Miss-Arkansas game and what that means. With Kevin Bohannon, we did our live stream preview. There's a little bit of reminiscing about the hit and 4th and 25 and how that is really Arkansas's real SEC rival before Texas came in and comes in, and it's kind of interesting to see because they've tried to pigeonhole Arkansas into these rivals, different places. just because they couldn't ever fit it. They tried to force it with LSU, and now they're trying to force it with Missouri. But in reality, their real rival in the SEC has always been Ole Miss. Ole Miss might not see it as a rival, but they see it as a rival, and that game actually means a good bit. But if you think about it, Ole Miss has Mississippi State, LSU, and Arkansas like as serious rivals. It's very Big Ten-esque. They need that Arkansas game probably needs a trophy to be played for, honestly, at this point, because it is Arkansas's best rival, and it is one of Ole Miss's best rivals. It's one of their top three, and keep an eye on that. I know we've played Vanderbilt a ton. I know we've played Tulane. Tulane's our oldest opponent. The other teams from that first season have folded, but Tulane is still around. We played them in 1893, but it should be fairly interesting. So looking at this game, I'm really excited about this game because of what it means. Now, both teams are going to be reeling a little bit from the physical beating that Alabama and Georgia puts on them. I expect Ole Miss to bounce back. They kind of bounced back last year. Not necessarily against Alabama, but they went from Alabama to Arkansas. That was the 6 interception game. Then they went to Auburn, and it was a game that they should have beat Auburn. If you remember correctly, Auburn just had the officials just completely mess up that game, a game that Ole Miss should have won. And you take that into account, all of a sudden Ole Miss is 8-2 in their last 10. As it sits now, they're 7-2 in their last 10, with losses at Tiger Stadium and at Bryant-Denny as the only two losses. I mean, that's a pretty interesting thing. That's the direction that I'm leaning right now with this game. I'm thinking about the fact that Ole Miss has won 8 out of 10. And Indiana was 11th in the country. They were a ranked team. So Ole Miss has beaten a ranked team at a neutral site. They just completely messed up Louisville. And the non-conference games, can affect your perspectives and warp kind of what you really are. But anybody expecting to go into Alabama, besides the players, they need to expect to win on everything they do. But if it was win or else to a regular fan, for that one, that is unrealistic. Because if Ole Miss wins that game, there's nobody on their schedule that's even competitive. You're saying basically national championship or bust at that point. And we are nowhere near that territory. Alabama lives there, and they live there every year. But we are nowhere near that territory. But right now we're 7-2 in our last 9. If we beat Arkansas, we'll go to 8-2. We have Tennessee, that's a chance at 9-2. Auburn, you see it the way it goes. LSU, then Auburn, and it has a chance to. This is turning into a nice little run we're on, and nobody's talking about it. But 7-2, that's nothing to sneeze at, with a loss at number 1 and a game that they'd like to have back against LSU. If they'd have won that game, they would have ended last season on a 5-game winning streak, started this season on a 3-game winning streak. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. But they're just so far ahead of schedule at the moment. And I can't stand people that analyze through binary means. It aggravates me to no end. The answer is almost always in the middle. But as it sits now with the rise of opinion shows and the fact that you have to have a take or an opinion on absolutely everything, the extreme opinions are the opinions. You're either great or you suck. There's no in between. And as far as I can see, great teams, there's only 2 teams that fits that category, and there's only 2 or 3 teams that fit suck category, and everybody else is in the middle. Now, when dealing with that, it's just, we try not to do that. That's a world we don't really want to live in because it's not true. It's dishonest at its best. It's not anywhere fact. It's whenever people, that drives me crazy. And the other thing that drives me crazy is people that say they want to get into journalism to make a difference. No, you go into journalism to be anonymous. You go into journalism just to report what's going on, to just be a voice, to communicate what is actually happening. You don't get into journalism to make a difference. That's ego talking. It's trying to go in and get famous. And if you're doing that, you will bend the rules and distort what journalism is supposed to be for that and financial gain. And that way, that is the reason I rail all the time about money being too close to content. And ego is just a terrible thing as well. But ego is something that has always been a problem. There's always been famous journalists in the field. But getting it too close to money mixed with ego, it all kinds of goes together. And you've got yourself a little bit of a problem. But in this game, I'm looking at two mirror images of each other. We talked about that earlier in the week. Two mirror images, and of those images, you are basically able to see exactly what Ole Miss would look like if Ole Miss had a running quarterback like KJ Jefferson, and you can see exactly what Arkansas would look like if they had a passing quarterback. It's, it's the same offense. They're doing the same thing. The same rules are in effect. It's Kendall Briles and Jeff Lebby. It's from the same tree. So it's going to look pretty similar. But Arkansas is in a position of running the ball, and they don't want to keep Matt Corral on the field. So you will see Arkansas use this offense to try and take the air out of the ball. They're on defense. They will try to heat up. At time to time, they'll pick their spots based out of a three-man, so it looks like drop 8, but you can see some zone blitzing and things like that to try and confuse Matt. And they're going to try to take the air out of the ball because that is the secret to Ole Miss, and that has been the secret for every high-flying powered offense in football since the beginning of time. If they don't have the ball on offense, they can't score. So Arkansas is going to try and take the air out of the game. The other reason for them doing that is if it gets to 14-0, if it gets to 17-0, Arkansas really doesn't have a way to fight back. They remind me of a modern-day wishbone team, to where everybody talked about when everybody was running the wishbone, we need to get in front of them. If we're in front of them, they can't catch up. And that's kind of the situation here. Because KJ Jefferson is not a very good short and intermediate passer. He's got a decent deep ball. And with Treylon Burks, there's a little bit of damage that can be done with that. So we have to be on guard for that. That's just enough to keep the safeties back and everybody from pressing down, unless your name is Georgia or Alabama. But it'll be interesting to see if you get into the game. Midway through the third quarter last week, KJ Jefferson was seeing shadows. Now, against Georgia, most quarterbacks are going to be like that. But if Sam Williams, who leads the SEC in sacks, can make him a little bit uncomfortable, if they can get after him, if they can force some long yardage stuff, they're in good shape. They're in real good shape. If they're in a position to where Arkansas is getting 4 yards on first down, 4 yards on second down, 4 yards on third down, that's a recipe for a long time consuming drive. And that is going to slow it down considerably. Because of this, I don't know what the under is in this game. Take the under. Let me look that up real quick. Let me look that up because I would say take the under. So all right, let's see what we got going on here. Sorry about this. This is excellent television. All right. I hate that they go to FBS first. They just need to do the top 25. The over-under for this game is 66.5. So that is 35-31 will not cover. So I'm tempted to take the under in this game. Yeah, because what's going on? Because Arkansas is going to take it out. They're going to try and heat up Matt. I think Matt's going to have a good day. I think Ole Miss is probably going to win by 10 points, but it'll be a 31-21 type game. That is my opinion of what's going to happen. Everybody has the narrative that Ole Miss has a rough defense. Ole Miss does not have a rough defense. Ole Miss actually has a decent defense, but it's still playing along, and it's going to get better as this season happens and they see more stuff. Alabama was able to play bully ball. Georgia was able to play bully ball. Here's the news break. Those are the two teams that can do that to these two teams. That's it. You don't have to worry about necessarily Arkansas playing bully ball, even though they're going to attack the weak spots of that defense because they know it, because they play it. So you can see them trying to run off tackle and zone plays that bounce out around the tackle. You'll see that a few times during the game because that's a weak spot in this run defense. It's going to be imperative for our box safeties to tackle very well. If they tackle well, things can get shut down. A penalty, a false start, that's been a problem with Arkansas. We need loudness in the stadium, and that'll affect that because if they get behind the chains, again, they don't have much of a way to get back in front of them. So I'm expecting a pretty good game, honestly. It's a game that Ole Miss can lose, obviously, but it's a game that Ole Miss should win because Ole Miss has a better team than Arkansas. They had a better team last year. They just tried to live and die by the passing game, and they died. But, 6 interceptions and having the ball in a one-score game with like 5 minutes to go, that kind of tells you where they sit. They were down 20-0 at halftime and just slowly worked their way back in. But it's going to be a situation where that can happen. I think we're just going to skip through the break. We're going to go to the uniforms. If you look at the uniforms for this weekend, baby blue jerseys, baby blue helmets, or powder blue, however you want to put it. White pants, white shoes, powder gloves, red bands, red accents. It's going to look really good. It's going to look like we all hoped it would. But it's a game that also, after wearing a traditional uniform last week, I knew this was going to happen. It was going to be some type of blue. This may be replacing the Navy a little bit, but I still expect to see Navy some this season. Maybe even against like Mississippi State or something like that. But this is a good-looking uniform. Look good, feel good. That's their whole motto, right? And they're going to be able to do that. So the powder blue uniform, they wore them against Louisville. They played very well in that game. And then, they started changing it a little bit, I think. I forget what they wore. I think they might have worn Navy. I don't know. I can't even remember the Austin Peay game. This has been a weird year. Ever since this COVID thing happened, time seems to move at a different rate. At least mentally. It's the most bizarre thing to where Austin Peay feels like it was 7 years ago at this point. And it was less than a month. Absolutely bizarre. But we have a lot of stuff going on with all of that. Now, so powder blue jerseys. Everybody have fun, be loud, be the game. Because we have 3 elite quarterbacks that will be in town for the game. Devin Brown will be there. He is a USC commit. He's from Utah. He's from the same high school, I believe, that Zach Wilson went to, and the current quarterback that's at USC right now. So, can't remember his name. I don't know. Can't remember. Maybe Jackson Dart or something like that. I don't know. But what is the name? I just want to look this up real quick. And trust me, you'll know why in just a second. I wasn't really planning on doing any type of recruiting thing. But let's see. All right. Also, 2023, the number 9 player in the country. His name is Nicholas Imaleva. Iamaleava is his last name. He is The number 9 player in the 2023 class. He's a quarterback coming in to visit a little bit. And he's also in, Arch Manning's class. So it's nice to know that they're not putting all of their eggs on the Arch basket. It's definitely nice to know that, what's going on. But he's 2023. 2024 quarterback from modern day, Elijah Brown, will also be in town. So this is quarterbacks from class of 2022, 2023, 2024. And this is going to set up the recruiting early in the process for each and every one of them. They're probably going to roll out the red carpet a little bit. I think they're really impressed with Elijah Brown, and I think they really are impressed with Devin Brown. It seems a guy that the opportunity to get him kind of won out, but he's still committed to USC. And I believe the 2024 quarterback Elijah Brown's wide receiver will be in town as well. So there's a lot of players from the West Coast starting to come out, and it's starting to gain some traction. And the talent level around Ole Miss is about to shoot up pretty good. I think the worst thing that happened to people was the fact that Ole Miss's staff that was used to only recruiting one way had to get good at recruiting over Skype and over phone and doing the COVID stuff, because all that practice, they found out what worked. And now they can mix that with what they're really good at, which is getting on the road and talking to people. Mix that with basic communications, and you have a potential for a recruiting juggernaut being built in Oxford. And I hope everybody sees that and understands what's going on, because there are players just kind of starting to line up to take a visit to Oxford. And that's the first step. If they get it on campus, if they get it on campus, that's all you have to do. Cool, Nathan Hill. That's fine. He can be gone to greener pastures by 2024 if he wants. He might be here for 10 years. And I don't think he's going to jump to a blue blood. Ole Miss is paying over $5 million a year. Where's he going to go? So, I understand that people want bad things to happen and are wishing Lane to leave, but the reality is there's no proof. Yeah, he's not going to LSU. Not after what they're about to do to Ed Orgeron. That's his boy. So let's talk about the injury front of what's going on. You have potentially Jerry and Ely that might be in concussion protocol. That'll affect the game in a little bit. And also Caleb Warren, who looks to have a little bit of an ankle thing. Apparently he was on crutches in midweek. And because of that, you're going to look at some retooling on the offensive line. Those are two players that could have an effect on what we're going to do. But if you're going to play against a drop 8 team, you might want to put somebody like Snoop Connor in the backfield. That's just kind of a battering ram and just let it work. Kind of the Zaire White of the Ole Miss backfield. Him and Henry Parrish is going to do work. I'm not overly concerned about the backfield because of how deep they are. I am a little bit concerned about the offensive line, but not because of what you think. Just because if it's Jordan Rhodes that replaces Caleb Warren, how's he going to react to the tempo that needs to be run to make this offense go? They may not drop 8, Nathan Hill. I think they're going to try and heat up Matt a little bit. They're going to throw some wrinkles in their drop 8, just because basically Matt sees it every day. Of course, this defense is the defense that Matt sees. And I think they will probably be fairly adept. It might slow Ole Miss down, but I think you'll see Ole Miss kind of drive it down the field. Last year they just didn't even play the R in the RPO. And Ole Miss tried to force passes early in the game. And Matt got into a little bit of trouble. By the time they figured out how to run the ball, they kind of went down the field a little bit a couple of times. But the damage had already been done. And that's the way Arkansas was able to do it. It was 20-0 at halftime. But Being in a one-score game with 5 minutes to go in the game, it kind of tells you that I don't see a lot to be afraid of when it comes to Arkansas. They're a good team, don't get me wrong, but they're a thin team. You saw that against Texas A&M when Treylon Burks and KJ Jefferson got hurt. The offense just got stagnant. And sometimes on 3rd and long, they just seem to get inept. And that's fine with that. But that's the reason I compare them to a wishbone team from back in the day. And yeah, definitely, Guy. He said the transfer center got introduced to the SEC hard last weekend. Yeah, opening in the SEC play against Alabama is always going to be an interesting situation. I mean, with the tempo and everything they're having to go, the place was loud. It was a truly big game atmosphere. And it's an atmosphere that Ole Miss and Ole Miss fans, that we should poke the bear when it comes to Alabama all the time. That game needs to be their absolute best. And we lost by 21 on the road. That's fine. Maybe next year we lose by 10. Maybe the year after that we lose by 3. But the fact is, if you get their absolute best and you take them down, who else can beat you? They're the gold standard. You don't want them to overlook you. You don't want it to be like it was in 2020, where they were coming off of scoring 60 points 3 years in a row. That's not what you want. So, anyway, Nathan Hell says he thinks Arkansas has 240 yards rushing tomorrow. That's absolutely fine. But as long as, how does that 240 yards happen? What does it look like? Because in between the 20s, if Arkansas is kicking field goals, it doesn't matter. They don't have a bruiser back like Brian Robinson. The other backs that ran for Alabama last week were smaller guys. They didn't have those days. But Brian Robinson was 36 carries for 176 yards. That's great, but that's about 5 yards a carry for somebody that was an actual bruiser and doing what he's doing. Treylon Smith is not that type of back. KJ Jefferson might be, but there's a chance that you get him nicked up doing what he's doing. So if they get 240 yards rushing, that's fine. Let them have it. The point about it is, can they defend us? Can we get 2 or 3 stops during the game? Because that was always the point with this defense, right? Whenever we were doing our saying in the beginning of the season, we're talking, it's like, if I told you Ole Miss had a defense that was ranked 70th in the country, would that matter? Yeah, and it would. So, yeah, I do expect but he doesn't start, and he's not going to start, Nathan. That's the point. Treylon Smith is going to start and get the majority of the carries. They're not going to – it's like Snoop Connor in the Ole Miss offense. There's no reason to just bench Treylon Smith. They're not going to do that. And Ole Miss is going to play a little bit better defensively if they get Jake Springer back this weekend, which is a possibility. That's one of our box safeties that is instrumental for stopping the run. Him and Otis Reese. What's going on with Chance Campbell? That kind of feeds our defense. But like I said, I'm not overly worried about any of the players. Maybe besides Treylon Burks at wide receiver. I'm not overly concerned about that. But they're offensively it's not going to be that much of a terror thing. Now, they're good. They're a good team. And their whole thing is to jump on you early. They're a script team. Let me explain what I mean by that. They're a script team. They want to go out there and get you early before you're used to the tempo, before you're used to everything that goes on, and jump on you, just like they did against Texas A&M. And then they want to count on the fact that their defense can slow you down to kind of make plays. So the Texas A&M formula is the Arkansas formula for this team. If they're not in the lead, though, they become very susceptible because they can't catch up, because they don't have the dudes. Now, they're going to get the dudes. They're absolutely going to get the dudes. But at this point right now, they do not have them. I think Malik Hornsby is going to be a fantastic quarterback. He's not there yet. He probably needs about 2 more years. But 2 more years with full recruiting class at Sam Pittman's disposal, you can see the growth that Arkansas is going to take. So I'm pretty excited about that. I want to appreciate everybody in the chat. Thank you very much, Nathan and Guy, for stopping by. Guy says, real quick before we get out here, Arkansas will get the Georgia offense from everyone until the end of the season. They will probably get a little bit of that. And yeah, and he says we're an advantage. Kiffin knows the Arkansas offense well. Remember last year, Ole Miss's defense actually, when everybody else was shredding them, the first game they played fairly well was against Arkansas. But tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central, we're going to do a Twitter Spaces. Tune in for that. Thank you very much, Nathan. And stop by anytime. Good to have you around. And Twitter Spaces tomorrow morning at 9 Central. We're going to talk a little bit about this game and talk about where it goes from here, getting ready for kickoff. So I'm Stephen Willis. This has been the POMcast. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.